Hey everyone, welcome back to Brownble. I'm so excited that you're here because today, special for those winter months, I'm going to teach you how to make a delicious corn and potato chowder. Now this is a typical chowder from Peru. It's called chupe, and all across Latin America there are different versions of this. Each family does it in a different way with different ingredients, but we're not doing any of those versions because those versions contain animal products. So I'm giving you my version, which is 100% vegan, really easy to make, and the best part is everything goes into one pot. Let's get started. Another thing I love about this dish is that it's so hearty, it's a whole meal. So this isn't like those kinds of soups you have as a starter. Forget about that. This is like a full meal and it's so scrumptious. The first step is of course our corn. This is a corn and potato chowder. So we're gonna use two different types. We're gonna use some loose kernels, corn kernels. Now these can be frozen or they can be canned. I prefer frozen. They're a little bit nicer in texture when you put them in the soup. And of course you can also take an ear of corn and just scrape off the little kernels. And we also need some whole chunks of corn. So these are 2 big ears of corn that I've cut into 4 pieces each. So we're gonna set that aside and we're gonna assemble all of our veggies, prep our veggies, cut them up, and then everything is going to a pot. First up, we're gonna chop really finely 1/4 of a bell pepper and 1/4 of an onion. Then we're gonna peel some potatoes and dice them into kind of bite-sized pieces, so a lot larger than the way we're gonna cut our bell pepper and our onions. And we're also gonna cut some tofu, some extra firm tofu into cubes, just like the potatoes. We're gonna need a large pot and we're gonna start by adding those pieces of the corn. Just add them to the pot. And with these pieces, these can be fresh if fresh corn is in season, but it can also be pieces of frozen corn or that corn that comes ready-made that is already cooked. The cooking time will depend on that, so I'm using the fresh. So that means we're gonna let this cook for a little bit. So that's why we're adding it before we add the rest of the ingredients. We're also adding some ingredients to flavor that broth. We're using veggie broth, but this is gonna add extra flavor. So here's our onion and peppers that we cut up before. And I also have some chopped cilantro. This is about a handful. I want to add most of it in now, but we're gonna reserve a little bit for plating the final dish. And of course, we need our veggie broth. The more concentrated, the better. Let's bring this up to a boil and we're gonna let that cook until those pieces of corn are nice and tender. You check it by kind of taking some kernels out with a fork. Once that's boiling, let's just move it around a little bit. Make sure everything's nicely covered. We're gonna cover the pot and just let that cook. We cover so that all of that veggie broth stays in there. We don't have too much evaporation. There's always gonna be a little bit, but if we keep it uncovered, it's gonna evaporate more. We still need that liquid for our base. Let's check and see. So grab a fork. If they come out easy like that, that usually means it's ready. You can give it a taste to see if they're tender. It usually takes about 15 to 20 minutes, something like that. So let's add in our potatoes. Now we have to cook our potatoes through. This is gonna take about 8 to 10 minutes. So let's add those in. Give it a stir. This time we're not gonna cover the pot. We're just gonna let this cook for about 8 to 10 minutes until those potatoes are tender, but be careful not to make them, into mush. Very important for them to hold their shape. Let's check and see. Just take a potato out. You can kind of prick it and it goes all the way through easily. That's it, it's done. So what we're gonna do now is add our tofu cubes. We're gonna let that get kind of infused with those flavors. And here we're basically just warming this up. So this is just gonna take a few minutes. We're gonna add our beautiful corn kernels. And this is supposed to be a thick chowder, but if at any point you feel that those potatoes absorb too much too much of that broth, and it's too thick and you want it a little bit runnier, just add more veggie broth. I always like to keep some on hand. I'm gonna add some now, just to make sure that everything is nicely covered in the pot. We're just gonna let this heat through. We're gonna warm up those kernels and that tofu, add the finishing touches, and we serve. Now it's time to check the seasoning. Everything's nicely warmed through and that kind of chowder is bubbling up again. So let's check it. I just checked it. It needs a little bit more sea salt. Remember, this has to be to taste and it depends on how much seasoning your veggie broth has. Let's give that a stir. We're gonna taste it and we're gonna turn off the heat. Perfect. final touch is some heavy non-dairy cream. It's very important that you add this once that heat is off, because if this boils again after you've added the cream is gonna separate a little bit. Nothing's gonna happen, it's not gonna go bad, but it's not gonna look as beautiful. So I like to add it at the very end, just before serving, and just mix it all together. So good. It smells so good. Did you see how easy that was? Now all we have to do is just top with a little bit of fresh cilantro just for some color and for that beautiful fresh taste, and you're ready to eat. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope you make this at home. It's one pot really quickly, and it's so hearty and filling. It's got a ton of protein, lots of veggies, really good. I'll see you next time.